Mental health. FarmBoy's podcast subscribers and viewers, we're not talking about mental health because it's popular, trendy. We're talking about it because it's real, it's serious, and it affects people we care about every day. Maybe it affects you. If this episode speaks to you, or if you know someone who might need to hear it, please, we're just asking you to share it. Like and subscribe would also be awesome, but please share it. This conversation could be the one that helps someone take a step toward healing. So don't just scroll past it. Please share it with a purpose. Smash that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, and like the video.
FarmBoys podcast merch is here. For the first time ever, we've got exclusive, original, one-of-a-kind FarmBoys podcast t-shirts and sweatshirts. This isn't just another shirt, it's a statement. A badge of honor for those who live the farm life, hustle hard, and keep faith at the center. They are limited, so get it before it's gone. Get yours now and rep the podcast that brings farm grit to the big city. How do I get mine? Head on over to Venmo at FarmBoys Podcast, where we have your t-shirts and sweatshirts available in multiple colors. Pick your favorite, order, pay all in one place. Limited time, so grab it now. This is the FarmBoys Podcast with mental health expert and licensed mental health therapist, Rebecca Kindreich.
Rebecca Kindreich. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I've been licensed for over 20 years, and I worked in multiple settings. I went to undergrad over at Concordia University and then went to get my master's at Cal State Long Beach. During my time, I've been trained in EMDR, I've done clinical supervision, and unfortunately have had a lot of experience assessing for suicide and homicide risks. We saw a lot of it at the university level, and unfortunately see it even with our kiddos that we see now at Seeds. About 4 or 5 years ago in 2021, God sort of put it on my heart to start working with our youth. And so since 2021, I started Seeds Christian Counseling, which is a nonprofit that provides mental health services to K through 12 Christian private schools throughout Orange County and in LA. And currently we have 7 schools and we have 21 therapists with us. It's been such a growing need, and I get multiple requests from people outside of our school-based services that we provide that Seeds will be expanding now to offer community counseling throughout the state of California. In person, and some telehealth sessions will be available. And so that will be launching here in June. So we're excited about that. Seeds comes in and helps support the schools on where they financially can afford us. And we've been blessed with donations and grants to offset that. But it is very reliant on the grants and donations to be able to provide this service for these students and to provide this ministry.
Well, Becky, thanks for coming on today. So let's get right into it. Some people think about mental health, they think about depression, and that's what I wanted to talk about today. There are some people out there, though, that think depression just might be literally just in the mind, that depression doesn't exist. So biggest question, most polarizing question I have for you, is depression a real thing, or is it just in somebody's head that they're sad or down and they can just bust out of it?
Yeah, that it is. Mental health, and depression being one of them, is such a challenging topic, and there's stigma around it for people. But yes, it does exist. Even when they do like MRIs on the brain, they can see there is a chemical difference in the mood. There's chemical changes when people are experiencing depression symptoms like sleep and appetite, and they're just down low, they're withdrawing and all that stuff, and they can see that. And they also know that because of their chemicals are low, that medication can help, just like somebody with diabetes or epilepsy, right? If the chemicals aren't correct in their brain, they need to take medication. Same thing with depression. And so we know that if you take some SSRIs, medication like or things like that, that now all of a sudden this person doesn't have those depressive symptoms. And so that would show that maybe those chemicals are truly something that's causing this depression, and it is a medical condition that we do have.
You brought up the SSRI. I recently heard a gentleman by the name of Gary Brecka talk about this, and he was definitely not for the SSRI because he explained that it somehow almost constricts serotonin. When he said, you should actually be given serotonin or somehow adjust the serotonin levels through food, actually, rather than a pill. So the pills that he's talked about, are those as dangerous as people make them sound?
I mean, I think there's side effects to everything, even with food, right? We know, like, if we eat too much sugar or drink too much alcohol or we're going to get fat, we're going to have all these side effects. We're going to be really hyper with all the sugar that we ingest, right? So there could be different side effects from food, but I think food, exercise, therapy can all definitely change up our levels and serotonin levels. But sometimes that might not be enough. And so the SSRIs are something that can be beneficial. But unfortunately, like going with psychiatry, it is a roller coaster sometimes for people. It takes a while to find out which medication is the right medication for you. And so it's really important to like be patient with that. But what I want to say is I personally have seen it professionally and personally with friends and family members that, but definitely professionally, when somebody is really struggling with anxiety, depression, suicide, something like that, and they get on this medication, or schizophrenia, bipolar, and they get on the medication, it is a game changer for them. And you see them now being able to live life, right, and be productive in life and be happy in life. And so it does. There's definitely a change for some people that really need it. And do I think everybody needs it? No, I think you should try other things before you go down that route. But I think there is a time and a place where it can really be beneficial, and the quality of life is so important. And so if you can, sort of tease out when that right time is, I think it can be really beneficial.
So you've studied depression for years. What's the biggest lie that we've been told in the U.S. about depression?
Biggest lie, I guess that people are just feeling sorry for themselves, and that it's not real, like you sort of said. And that people just need to get over it, and they think that they're faking it.
Okay. All right. Why does it seem like the people who have it all, money, success, a million Instagram followers, why are those the people that often feel the emptiest?
Well, some of it sometimes is how true are relationships and connectivity, and relationships and connecting with somebody is one of the main important factors of feeling quality of life. And our society, unfortunately, we're getting more and more disconnected, right? We don't even need to go to the grocery store anymore to get our food. We don't even need to meet the delivery driver at the front door anymore, right? They just drop it off and send you a text. So we're getting more and more removed from relationships, and that does have an effect on our serotonin, dopamine level when we do interact with one another. And so we're losing that piece. And so some of these people it's not, maybe not reality for them, or not, it's just out there and people see all these things, but do they have true friends? Do they have true connections? Money can't buy those.
Can you explain why some people, and maybe it's some of these people we just described, money, success, followers, and I'm sure I've done it, I'm sure you've done it, I'm sure everybody who's watching this has done it, people smile when they feel like they're dying inside, or it's just not great inside. Why? How can you explain why some people smile, why they feel like they're dying inside?
Well, sometimes it's their defense mechanism that kicks in, right? And so they don't want people to be asking them questions. They want to act like everything is okay. They want to act strong. They need to act strong depending on what role they're in. So I think smiling is a big one, and it's funny because smiling is also a key thing in relationships, and talking to others and engaging with others is and being kind to others is smiling. So smiling can be a good thing, but sometimes people do use it as, they're nervous, right? So you smile, but yeah, and they don't want people to ask them things, and so it can be a defense mechanism, but it's also such a great skill, great thing to do. It makes you happier when you smile. It's supposed to, but when you're using it the right way, I guess.
So do you think depression is a signal that something in life needs to change, or do you think it's just chemistry?
It could be a little bit of both, I think. It depends. Is it situational depression where, something happened, a grief and loss type situation, a divorce situation, things like that? Or, is it something that's been ongoing, and even with little things you feel like you just can't get over and move forward, and it's consistent, it's every day, it's a consistent thing that you're feeling?
We've already talked a lot about sadness and feeling down. So where is that line when you can, I guess, see the difference between sadness and actual clinical depression? Is it a time where, okay, I've been in bed for 5 straight days, I can't get out, I can't move, my body aches, I hate life? Or I guess what are maybe some of the signs, or maybe some of the red flags that somebody could say, you know what, I may actually have a real problem here. I'm not just sad.
I think when you're like depressed for most of the day, you lose interest in the things that you like to do. That, like, I used to always go out with my friends and go to the movies, and now it's like I don't even want to go anymore. Like, it doesn't give me any happiness to do anything. You might have some sleep issues, right? Is like you can't fall asleep, or you're sleeping too much, right? So that those are common ones. Your appetite, loss of appetite, or you're eating too much plays a big part in all of it. And just, it's affecting your daily life activities, such as, like, if you're in school, you're not performing at school, you're not doing your grades, listening, paying attention, and just withdrawing a lot. So I guess it goes to that next level. As a therapist, that's what we're going to sort of assess. Is it just like this situational depression because something's going on and they're sad, and that would be appropriate to be sad at that level? Or is it something that they've been going through for a while? We see a pattern here. And again, it's affecting your daily living activities, work, whatever.
Okay. So we've always heard about silent killers for physical health, some whatever is a silent killer. What do you think the silent killers are that feed depression the most without people even knowing it? And I guess what comes to mind is isolation, or being a perfectionist, maybe some OCD. Like, are those things anything that can contribute to depression? Because you would think, being a perfectionist, like, if it's not exactly right every time and you're a true perfectionist, like, boy, that could really run hard on you. Or even isolation of, what, I don't want to be with anybody, I just want to be alone, I want to look at my phone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And some of anxiety and depression sort of are hand in hand. So sometimes it looks like it's anxiety and it's depression, or vice versa. And a lot of times, even with psychotherapy and medication, they sometimes use the same sort of medication to treat that, or psychotherapy like CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, to treat it. And then you have ADHD that sort of fits into all that category too, where it looks like it's depression or anxiety, but it's a it's a symptom of your ADHD. Like the perfectionism, sure, now you have the fear of failure, right? Which causes anxiety, can turn into depression from that. But that's a big one right now with our kids. That's one of the reasons why kids will get depressed or get anxious, is that pressure, whether it is at their school, and I have to get these A's because I got to be able to get to the great high school and then go to a great college and university in order to get this stellar job and make all this money, right? And be successful, not only because I need to financially, but also because my parents are putting a lot of pressure on us, right? And the same thing with sports. Sports is huge in Orange County where I live, and it's very competitive. And so there's a lot of pressure at a very young age. The kids are told, like, it's time to get into travel ball or club basketball at 5 or 6, 7 years old. And if you're not, you're going to be behind the curve from everyone else. And so we're teaching these kids that they have to excel and be the best at such an early age, and a lot of pressure on them.
So, do you think we can turn that pressure into a positive, though? Isn't it good from a mental health perspective to feel that pressure sometimes of, hey, I want, it can make us better, maybe more sensitive with our senses. We're maybe just kind of on the edge between, okay, I'm a little out of control, but this pressure is going to make me perform at a higher level. Is there any truth to that?
Yeah, so that's sort of like the good stress we have, right? And there's stress and there's anxiety. And so that would be sort of like stress of like external stuff of what we want to get done outside, whereas anxiety is more internal. And so with stress, we might feel a little bit overwhelmed over, hey, we have this big test coming up or exam, and I'm feeling stressed out about that. But that can be good because that can motivate us to study for that test and work hard at something and do well. But anxiety is a little different, where you're gonna have more internal, and it's not just the test. It's even after the test, I'm still feeling, anxious about things or feeling overwhelmed, and yet that event has already ended. And so it can be good if we have good stress. But for our kiddos, especially because right now that's who I work a lot with, and at Seeds our staff work a lot with, is remember, our kids' brains don't develop until like 26, 28. And they're even saying older for males and females on developing their brain. So they don't have that logic piece yet, the frontal part, completely developed. And so when we're putting all these pressures and stress, they're not going to quite understand it the same way that an adult should be able to conceptualize it and deal with it. And so what is an appropriate thing? Some of these things that we wouldn't expect a kiddo to go to the stove and start making something, with a fire and all this stuff at a really young age, because they don't have that concept yet, right? So something similar to that, I guess.
So you brought up like 26 or 28. The first thing that kind of comes to my mind is athletics, like you spoke about, athletes. Somebody like Kobe Bryant at such a young age just thrived under that pressure and, obviously strove to be the very best basketball player in the world. Do you think that he had, in a way, too many stressors, or do you think that stress was healthy for him? And you could even think of Tiger Woods too, right? His dad just pushing him so hard to be the best golfer. Does that ultimately benefit? It obviously benefited them in their careers, but do you think that benefits them mentally going through life, or do you think that that's going to harm him at some point?
Well, I mean, they weren't perfect, and they had some personal stuff that came out, in the media. Both of those men did, of things. And so they might look good and can perform their athletic skill really well, but it doesn't mean that they're doing okay mentally. Just like we have a lot of comedians that are severely depressed. Robin Williams, committed, and ones that Chris Farley overdosed, right, from drugs. And so they're trying to find something with the drugs, right, to cope with not feeling good, right? That's why people a lot of times take drugs, right? They want that high. They want something to feel better. And so, and that just spirals out of control into drug addiction. But, but yeah, I think who knows what kind of therapy or treatment either of those had. I'm sure they both probably went and got some help. And we know with sports, especially now, mental health is such a big aspect of it. It's on all these commercials, and these athletes coming out to it, but it's also a big part of the game. Are you going to get that? Are you going to be there mentally? Because if you can't get it mentally, your skill's not going to take you at this time anymore. You need more of the mental piece too.
So my last piece on this with the kids specifically having pressure. Personally, I think it's good. I think we're at some point kind of raising pansies as kids, but where is that line? If I'm right, and I'm not saying I'm right, you're the expert, I'm not, but if we do want to make our kids strong mentally and adults, I guess where is that line, or just does it vary for each kid? Is child A over here, they can go do 5 days a week and then compete on Saturday, 1 day break of sports. And, child B over here, you put them doing the same thing, they can't do it? Or do you think it's too much for both? Like, what do you think that line is?
Yeah, I mean, even in my own family, I have two boys that are 2 years apart, a little less than 2 years apart, and they are very different. My one son is just like you said, he wants to go 7 days a week, and he's doing it baseball and basketball nonstop. And my other little boy loves baseball and basketball and sports. He loves doing all that stuff, but he does not want that same level. And he's articulated that. And he's 10 now, but he said, I don't want to be like my brother who does all that. That's too much for me. I don't want 5 games in a day. Whereas my other son will do 5 games in a day, literally, and then go ahead and say, can we go hit in the batting cage, Dad? Or can we go shoot at the court? So it definitely is between, you have to look at each kid uniquely for sure. But I do believe we do need to build some resilience in our kids. And that's something that's definitely missing. And unfortunately, it then eventually relates to the workforce and how they perform in their jobs and stuff, as far as their work ethic and things like that. So I do think parents do need to push to a certain level, but sort of know their kid and know how far they can push their kids, and not always fix their mistakes. Let them grow from those mistakes. That's a great thing to make a mistake, because that's a time where you're going to figure out how to learn and grow, is when those mistakes are happening.
Back on depression now. You're a Christian organization. This is a Christian podcast. How does someone reconcile depression with their faith?
Well, I think it's huge that we do have our Christian faith to rely on. It is harder when I've worked in secular agencies, hospitals, things like that, and people don't have a faith to land on, because we know that there is going to be trials and tribulations throughout our lives. God tells us that that's going to be there, but to know that God is walking next to us, and it's sort of like the footprints in the sand little piece, right? We know he's holding us through these hard times. And I guess knowing that we have this God is just, I guess, just a piece that we would use in therapy, and turning things to scripture and talking about different people throughout the Bible that have struggled with ups and downs and how they've gotten through them. And life's not perfect, and there's sin, that's what happened with the devil coming in, and Adam and Eve. It started back then. So, yeah.
Do you think you can be spiritual and still feel shattered inside?
Yes. Because again, the devil works hard. I think there's spiritual warfare definitely going on throughout our country, and in our schools, within Christians. I feel like sometimes, our Christian community gets attacked. Satan wants to hit that Christian community hard. And so, yeah, I think it can be a blessing and a curse, right? To be spiritual.
Let's go over to men real quick here. And I'm not saying women don't do this, but why do you think men so often mask their depression with like anger or some type of distraction?
Some of it I think is like the stigma, like they feel like they have to be the strong one and they can't show the weakness, that they have to be able to be the head of the household. They can't cry, they can't show emotion. Some of it was taught to them too by, their father and their grandparents and passed down. And so I think the males are wired differently, right? We have different chromosomes and different moods and different cycles that we all go through. And so I think there is a big difference with males and females, or there can be a difference with males and females on how they react, just like with kids and adults, on how depression comes out and plays out is different.
I know how a guy, masks depression. So how do females mask depression then? And I'm not saying it's a one size fits all. I'm just saying, generically speaking.
How do they mask it? The female?
Yeah.
I would say they mask it similar. I would say males, though, mask it more. Women are more apt to getting help or reaching out to somebody or sharing their emotion and feelings, whereas males not always, and they might not even be. I think females are just a little bit more insightful about what they're feeling than males, and so they're able to name some of it or recognize it. Whereas with a male, their brain just isn't that set up that way to always think of that way. Like, oh, I never thought of that, is what some of them would say when we have them in therapy. Like it's a foreign thing,
So it sounds like you reach men and women separately when it comes to depression. You approach them in different ways. Is that correct?
It can be. Again, it depends. I mean, there's no textbook for any client that walks through the door. There might be some similarities and traits, but you really have to sort of go with where they're at, who they are when they come in, and just really be with them in the room and get to know them. And then that's how you can sort of, as a therapist, be able to walk alongside them and help them and treat them. But really first taking them who they are, not sort of throwing out the textbook at some point, and just sitting there and being there for them.
Whether you're male or female, people always mask depression, like we talked about, with a smile. What do you think some other signs of depression that don't look like depression? Like somebody smiles all the time. I mean, is somebody really that happy all the time? Unfortunately, I think there are people like that. But do you think there are other signs of depression that people do that don't look like depression?
Sure. I think you can go on Facebook and see all these people going on all these great trips and having this beautiful family, and then realizing that's just that picture for that instant that the family said, all right, everybody smile, right? And then a second later, they're all fighting and complaining and all that kind of stuff. And so I think people can hide it really, really well. They can look very successful in their job and be doing all this stuff and then going home and just being crying and feeling empty inside, So, I do think that there's different ways you can mask depression besides just a smile.
Okay. In 20 years, I'm sure you've seen a lot of trauma, or people that have gone through trauma. So do you think trauma always leads to depression, or do a lot of people come out of it stronger? So it almost like it creates strength.
It definitely could create strength if you are able to conquer some of the trauma that you went through. And EMDR is something that people will use a lot for trauma. It's eye movement, desensitization, reprocessing. And so that's a technique that a lot of people will go to. That's really popular right now. But even talk therapy, whether it's something from childhood, so it's more psychodynamic type therapy that's needed. CBT can help with that. So there's different therapeutic modalities that you could use to treat trauma. But if you're able to get through that trauma and overcome it, yeah, it can make a world of difference, not only for your quality of life, but I think being very hopeful for others that maybe are going through a similar thing or some other sort of trauma, and to see like, hey, I've overcome this. How many books have we read, about people that have overcome different traumas and what a difference they've made, and an inspiration for others too.
So we talked about trauma and how people can become stronger from it, but obviously it leads to depression. So why sometimes does healing that trauma feel scarier than being traumatized or staying broken?
You can think of it as like a deep cut or something, right? So you get a deep cut and it hurts right away, but eventually as you treat it, it can get better, it can heal. And so, but it's going to take time to do that. So it's not like with trauma, it's not something that's going to just instantly just get fixed. It's going to take time to heal that pain and go through it and process through it all. And feel, depending on what the trauma is, feeling safe and secure, right, is a lot of times what something happened that we were not safe, right? We weren't secure, we weren't in control, those things. And so it's going to take time to build that. Just sort of like you have a kiddo that lies to you all the time. Well, then the next time they tell you something, are you going to believe it? No, they have to build that trust with you. So
can someone grow addicted to their depression then, even if they want to heal?
yeah, I think there's sometimes, I've come across different clients that they just like to sit in it and just be in it. And they're not willing to work or put the steps in. And it could be just because that is, again, what they're comfortable with. That's what they're used to. That's all they've known. So it can be hard, and they have to decide where that breaking point is, where they're finally ready to make that next step to start doing maybe some of the homework assignments their therapist is giving, or if it is a chemical imbalance, start maybe looking and getting an evaluation by a psychiatrist to see, is medication something? Can they change their diet? Is exercise? Sleep's a huge piece, right? I think that's one of the number one things we need to do for ourselves is sleep. So yeah, I think, and then, we have that connectivity with relationships and people.
We've talked a lot about depression and, signs and things like that. So let's talk a little bit about how we can deal with it. So what do you think is the smallest daily habit that you've seen anyway that can transform someone's mental health from, and I'm not saying this little daily habit has to, kick them out of depression, but what do you think is a good daily habit?
I like the one where it's 3-2-1, it's called, and it's 3 things that you're thankful for, 2 things that you're excited about, and 1 thing that you want to accomplish that day or the next day. So going to bed, there's been a lot of research and studies saying do that at night, do it in the morning, but doing that 3-2-1, it sort of changes your mindset, right? Which is really important, and starts having you think of those positive things in life and being motivated to do things. And I think that's huge to do that. And there's been so much research back on that. And again, it's sort of like you have all this negativity, and maybe you have, 8 positive things, but you have 1 negative thing. And what are you going to focus on? That negative thing. So if we can start training our minds to start focusing on some of the positive things, and it can be as simple as, I'm thankful that the sun's out today. I love warm weather, and I'm thankful that I have that. And I'm also thankful that I'm going to have time tonight to go outside and take a walk because I don't have all these things going on today. So I try to tell clients too, like, have different ones. Don't try to use the same ones over again. But yeah, the 3-2-1 is something that I really like to do, and I think can make a change.
And so how often do you think you should do that? Just like once a day before you go to bed, or should you do it when you wake up, maybe once in the afternoon and once before bed? Or, I guess, is there really any number?
No, there's not really a number. I mean, it's good to do it. I think what is recommended is like 5-10 minutes a day. Spend some time to work on your mental health. And so for some people, they're night people, and night's a good time to do it. And for others, it's morning. So that's a good time. And even just like, having time to sit and do your daily devotion, do your mindfulness, like that 3-2-1 exercise. Take some deep breaths, just breathing. There's a lot of research behind doing breathing. I like for our little kiddos this cookie breathing, they call it. And it's where you like pretend like you have a hot chocolate chip cookie in your hand, and you're breathing it all in, you're smelling it. So you take a deep breath in, breathing it in, but it's super hot. So you want to blow it out just a little bit to make it cool, nice and slow, blowing it out to keep it cool so the cookie doesn't crumble. And so that's a cute one that I like to do with some of the kids. And some of my therapists like to use that one. But there's tons of different methods of breathing. You can even listen to one on a podcast or YouTube or whatever, if it's helpful for you to hear a voice as you're going through the breathing. But taking those deep breaths in and out, doing some mindfulness of the 3-2-1, those kinds of things, and sleep, get that sleep. So
with sleep and even kind of rewiring our minds for good daily habits, I guess, what are some overall things as well that you think can contribute to fighting off depression, fighting depression, and just not ever going there? Do you think food ever has the ability to put us in depression, or how we interact throughout the day? What else, like for the 9-to-5ers, somebody who goes to a job 9, gets off at 5, they're stuck behind a desk. I mean, whatever it is, what do you think some things are that they can do or even avoid doing to have a better mental health state?
Well, if they can get out and exercise, that's always good. If you exercise with somebody, that's even better because they're here, you're having that relationship and that connectivity. And doing like self-care stuff for yourself is important. And doing things that you enjoy. So if it's reading, and it's reading the Bible, maybe that's your time that you take for yourself to just decompress from the day, because they're hard days and you might not get a lot of time. Sometimes it might only be 15 minutes that you get, spending time with your dogs, your pets, right? That can be right away. Just petting a dog increases our endorphin, our dopamine level, I think is what they say, serotonin levels. So just like seeing a baby and holding a baby can do the same thing. And so thinking of things that bring you joy in life and trying to incorporate that in your daily routines. And yeah, do we know food? I mean, I'm not a dietitian, but we do know that food can play a role on, if we overeat, we probably don't feel so great, right? We have a stomach ache or we feel guilty, and it goes down that path. And then we start going down eating disordered or disordered eating, right? Or eating too much sugar, drinking too much alcohol, those kinds of things in excess is not good. So staying moderate in what we're doing as far as our eating habits, I think are huge. But yeah, all of that's one thing that we'll ask in therapy is, tell me about your sleep. Tell me about your appetite, right? How are you doing on those things? Because they're important. Tell me about your relationships. Tell me about a support person that you have in your life. Tell me about things you like to do. So we sort of gather all that information as a clinician to try to help assess like what's working and maybe what's areas that they can work on, and then maybe make those appropriate referrals. Is it to a dietitian? Is it to a sleep expert? Is it to your medical doctor? Because maybe it's a thyroid condition, right? That's causing some of this mental health stuff going on. So yeah, just sort of getting a full picture and then making some referrals and then seeing what is like something that we're going to do cognitive behavioral therapy with you on, or whatever, some psychotherapy on.
So we've had a great time here. We've heard a lot of things about depression, but I want to end on a very serious note and helpful note. If someone is listening right now and they're close to giving up, let's say. And I don't want to assume giving up means anything, but they're not in a good spot. What do you want them to know or to hear?
That there is help out there, and that they should connect with, if they can find a therapist or a friend that maybe can refer them to a therapist, that'd be really helpful. There's also the National Crisis Line that you could call, that you can talk to somebody. There's a text hotline you can call to talk to somebody. And if you're really feeling unsafe, you can always go to an ER, your local ER, and they can help you and get you connected to where you need to be to get the support. So if they're feeling really low and out of control, your local ER is a great spot to go to. Because again, if it's medication needed and things like that, the help can be done immediately.